everyone, so in this video we're going to talk about the celebrated and revered rosehip syrup. In section 2 of the workbook you'll get all the history around rosehip, but during World War II, when there was the blockades and the rationing, the Ministry for the Interior put all their food scientists to work to try and find a way of giving the British people high levels of vitamin C and antioxidants with the rationing and the shortage of imported foods, and they stumbled across rose hips as a form of medicine, and since then it's exploded. In the war years it became a national obsession, going out collecting rose hips, collecting enough rose hips in the autumn to last through until the next autumn. It was an obsession. That it was an obligation for everyone in England who could walk pretty much to go out and forage for rose hips to make rosehip syrup. And the science around that decision and that motivation and that behaviour is absolutely 100% proven and robust, because rosehip contains incredibly high levels of vitamin C, antioxidants, certain minerals that are essential for the mobilization of the immune system. It's just an immune system tonic powerhouse. And the fact that it comes into season in autumn means that we can make it, or late summer, autumn, it means that we can make it when we need it. We can make it for the impending winter season. As the rosehip comes into season, late summer, early autumn, make up the elderberry, the rosehip syrup. It means we can use it preventatively, having maybe 1 or 2 teaspoons a day, just to keep our immune system and our respiratory system tonified, and then we can use it in acute doses if we develop a cold or a flu or a winter infection. So it's such an important remedy to make, and this rosehip syrup is our favourite because it doesn't require the use of sugar. Because if you go online or you do a wider research around things like rosehip syrup, elderberry syrup, hawthorn berry syrup, most of them contain very high levels of sugar. And that's counterintuitive to a degree, because sugar is inflammatory, sugar is immunosuppressing, sugar is not going to help us prevent illness or treat illness. Okay, so the benefit and beauty of this recipe is not only does it do away with processed sugar, but it replaces it with raw honey. And raw honey is an immune tonic in and of itself. It's a respiratory tonic. It's loaded with vitamins and minerals and healthy fats. So we're taking away the bad and we're adding in something that's profoundly good. So you've got all of the health benefits of the rosehip and all of the health benefits of raw honey, and you add it together into this powerhouse syrup. We also include cloves in ours as well, just because it's such a great respiratory tonic. So all you need to do, so again, we're using dried rose hips in this video because we're not in rosehip season. And the only thing to emphasize, if the recipe is exactly the same, the recipe is designed for fresh rose hips. The only thing to emphasize is when you're making your syrup, you have to take out the inner seeds, because they've got this really fine hair on it that can aggravate when we swallow it. Okay, so all you do is get your rose hip, cut it in half with scissors, and wash out and flush out all of the seeds and all of the hair under cold water. Okay, it's super simple, super easy. Once you've done that, you then get 1 cup of rose hips, and obviously you can extrapolate this. It makes more sense to make it in bigger batches, but it's the same ratio, so it's 1 to 3. So 1 cup of rose hips go into a saucepan with 3 cups of water and 5 cloves, and that all goes into the saucepan. And then you bring that to a rapid boil, and then you dial it right down and you simmer it for about half an hour to extract all of the vitamins and minerals and goodness from the cloves and the rosehip into the water. Okay, so essentially you're making a very strong infusion, a decoction or a strong tea. Once you've done that, and also it's well worth drying rose hips. In section 2 of the workbook, it tells you how to dry rose hips. It's something we really recommend, because these are rose hips that we harvested and foraged for and dried ourselves, and it's great to have them in. Once you've simmered that for half an hour, all you do is strain it through a sieve into a bowl. Make sure you get out all of the residue at the bottom. And then what you do want to do is you want to press all that through with a potato masher, because the rose hips there will be containing masses of liquid, and that's where all the goodness is. So you don't want any liquid left in the rose hip. So you really want to press and squeeze all of that goodness out of the rose hips. Okay. And it might be a little bit easier actually with a fork. So you're pressing it all out, all that liquid. So you've got 3 cups of water, 1 cup of rose hips. Okay, and I'm, for the sake of the video, obviously going through this a little bit quicker. When you're doing it properly, don't rush this phase, because the strength of the syrup is dependent upon extracting as much of the goodness from the rose hip as you can, and that comes in this period now when you're squeezing the liquid out of the rose hips themselves. Once you've done that, you're then going to want to pour that back into the saucepan, okay? Because we're not using sugar, we need to use honey, as I said. And if you're using honey in these kinds of syrups, you need to make sure it's thoroughly melted and dispersed. You want it dispersed into the whole volume. And to do that, you need to very lightly, gently heat it. So you pour the base into the saucepan, put it on the lowest possible heat. That's still very warm because I've just finished prepping it, because that's been simmering. So that's brought to the boil and simmered for half an hour. So I pre-prepared that for the sake of the exercise. So it's still quite hot actually. And then you want 1 cup of syrup. So you've got 1 cup of rose hips, 3 cups of water, 1 cup of honey. But it's so important to emphasize this needs to be raw honey, not processed honey, not heat treated honey, not mass produced honey from the supermarket, because that hasn't got the health benefits of raw honey. So it needs to be raw honey. So 1 cup, so 1 cup rose hips, 3 cups water, 1 cup honey. And you want to pour that honey into the rose hip decoction. So now you've got a syrup. So all a herbal syrup is a strong herbal decoction or infusion that's sweetened with honey or sugar. Okay, so you've now got that, and you don't want to heat it. You don't want it to come anywhere close to a boiling point. You don't want any bubbling, any simmer, anything like that, because if you heat the honey too much, you're going to destroy all the elements, all the goodness in the honey. So you're just bringing it to a point where you can hold your finger in it and it's not going to burn you, but it does need to be warm, because the warmer it is, the easier it's going to be to disperse the honey. So already I can see now, because this liquid is warm, or before I poured it in, I can see the honey. When you pour it in, you can see a big blob of the honey in the saucepan, and that's pretty much dispersed now. I can't really see it. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that on simmer for a little bit longer. And then, now you've got your syrup, and now you've got an option. So if you make it like that, you can bottle it like that, you can store it in the fridge, and it's going to last. It's going to last for a good few months. Okay, but you've got the option of adding in some brandy. Okay, it needs to be over 40% volume, and if you add that into the syrup, it's going to significantly, drastically prolong the lifespan of the syrup, because the alcohol acts as a preservative. We always add it in just for that reason. Small amounts of alcohol, they dilate the arteries, it reduces congestion. So it's got medicinal properties in small doses. So it's up to you whether you add the brandy in or not. And the instructions for that are obviously in the written instructions. So you can finish it there, or if you're putting in the brandy, it needs to be a quarter of a cup. Okay, so you've got the 1 cup of the rose hips, the 1 cup of honey, 3 cups of water. You then want to add in a quarter of a cup of your brandy. Okay, so that goes into the mix. And then you want to give that a really good stir. And I'm going to turn it off the heat now because I can see that the honey is completely dispersed in there. It's completely dissolved and completely dispersed. So now you've got your syrup. You've got all of the goodness from the rose hips that have been extracted out of the fruit. So you've got all of the vitamin C and antioxidants and minerals and vitamins in there. You've got all of the therapeutic property of the honey. You've got the brandy as a preservative. You've got all of the respiratory benefits of the cloves, all into a sweet syrup. All that's left to do is get your sterilized jars. Usually we use bigger jars, but they're all full at the moment. And all you do, there's usually a little bit of debris in there, so you can filter it through a sieve. You just pour that into your sterilized jars, like so. Seal them with an airtight lid. And if you're using the brandy, you can store it in a cupboard, a dark cupboard, but I think it's best to just store them in the fridge because it prolongs it even more. So you can store those in the fridge. The other option you've got is you can pour the syrup into ice cube trays and then put those in the freezer and freeze them, and that pretty much keeps them indefinitely. And then you can just take out 1 cube at a time, put it into a cup, pour over boiling water and make a tea out of it, or put it into a smoothie, or melt it and pour it over porridge. So it's great to do both. Have a couple of trays of frozen syrup and as many jars as you can. I think you want liters of this made up because come winter, it's going to be your best friend. Your elderberry syrup and rosehip syrup are your #1 turn-to treatments. It's free if you foraged it. It's empowering to make it ourselves, and it's clinically proven. It's potently effective, and it tastes good. So it's a win-win. So go out, get your rose hips, make your syrup.